Hi, my name is Michelle, and today I want to talk about my burnout story. I spend the majority of my time interviewing women who have done most incredible things. And 9 times out of 10, there's a burnout story. So today, in this video, I wanted to share mine. Hopefully it can help any of you out there who may have some of the symptoms and may feel like you're burning out too. So I'm going to talk about when I first discovered that I was burning out. I'm then going to go into the symptoms that I overlooked. And then I'm going to go into how I basically recovered and then rebuilt my life. And then finally, what I do now to make sure that I don't burn out every single week, month, or year as of yet. First up, I think it's really important to discuss the fact that burnout can look very different for lots of different people. And the extremity of my story might not resonate with you, but there might be some things that you think, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I am going through a little bit of that. And like I said, towards the end, I'm going to give you some idea of how I deal with it on a daily basis that hopefully might be able to help you out too. All right, so let's get into it. So my burnout story. Before I started She Dares Wins and the show, I had a really tough 2 years in an existing job. I worked in construction, 17 years out in the field on construction sites, doing the most crazy adrenaline run projects. And yeah, I burnt out hard. I also had 2 children towards the end of that journey and 2 businesses. Well, I'd started up 2 businesses, one of which was the She Dares Win clothing line, but I'm not going to get into that. First up, what happened? Well, here we go. I ended up in hospital. Yeah, and it was after a period of 12 months, but I'll take you specifically to the day that this happened. I was in hospital after lots of testing, like I say, over a period of probably a good year. The doctor hooked me up to an ECG, which I'd been hooked up to many times before. And he looked at me and he said something that was pretty impactful and changed everything from that day forward. He said to me, explain to me what you do. Simple as that. And I sat there hooked up and I said, well, I have a business. I have 2 small children under 5. I have a podcast that I've just started. I work in construction 3 days a week as an engineer. And as I was reeling off all of these things, I could just see his cogs turning and then my cogs turning and me just thinking, oh, wow, this is a lot. And he just smiled. He didn't actually say anything. He just smiled and he said, I think this is stress. And I think you perhaps need to look at what it is that you're doing in life and maybe realign. And from that day forward, after leaving the hospital, I knew I had to rebuild because I was broken physically and mentally, which leads me nicely into talking about some of my symptoms that might resonate with you or might not. I was heavy on the physical symptoms, but I know a lot of people suffer from mental ones too. Okay, so let's get into the symptoms. These symptoms I actually ignored for quite a while. Looking back, initially there were some symptoms that I probably should have been more aware of. These were, for example, tiredness all the time. Yes, I had 2 children, so that could account for it. They were very young and there were sleepless nights. But this was like the physical and mental tiredness where you just zapped the whole entire time. The next one is like being completely irritable. I know this runs alongside being tired, but at work, I used to love the buzz of working on a construction site and it kept me going. And I was someone that ran through my whole 20s on adrenaline. And then boom, like I just didn't want to do anything. And that wasn't me. I was the person that loved to put out the fires and, get onto the next project. And I just didn't want to do it. And that was pretty hard to deal with for both me and then people that I worked with, because I think they saw that too. And then ties into this was poor eating. I didn't really care. I started to lose interest and care about caring for myself. And a big part of that was just eating poorly, lots of fast food, things that made me feel better instantaneously. But then after, I just felt like garbage. And this was just a continual thing. Lots of chocolate. I still love a good chocolate bar, but I just really wasn't taking care of myself. And then this led into the physical symptoms. So I had this pain in my throat It was like I couldn't swallow, and I actually thought that I'd got food stuck. And so that was the initial visit to the doctor. And so they were quite worried at the start, maybe because I over exaggerated my symptoms. Again, a subtle poke to I probably was reaching out for some help. But I ended up going and have a camera down into my stomach, and that was pretty scary, but they didn't find anything. And then the symptoms kept going. They thought originally it was reflux, which, looking back onto it, your gut, there's so much research on this, is like the center point for your nervous system and stress when it comes to like regulating things, helping with anxiety and stress. And obviously my gut was full of McDonald's, so it wasn't really doing its job. And maybe I did have reflux, but the symptoms didn't really eye up for me. And then I went into this whole negative like drawdown of like, oh my God, like health anxiety, there's something desperately wrong, they're not going to find it. When they do find it, it's going to be too late. You can see how the spiral happened, right? And then it went to like weight loss, because I went on a really strict diet thinking it was something within my diet. And then what happened was heart palpitations. Yeah, and that was pretty scary. So like deep thudding in the heart, and I was like, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. And this happened so many times that they hooked me up to an ECG for 48 hours. And I was really scared. And I remember going back into the hospital and just thinking, maybe the majority of this is in your head, Michelle. So I ended up putting the ECG back and was like, right, I've got to fix myself. And that didn't work, because 2 weeks later was what I was talking about at the start of this video. I ended up in hospital and I was convinced I was having a heart attack. I had pains on the left side of my chest and heart palpitations, and I was really scared. And it was at this point that the doctors knew that they'd done all the correct blood tests for me. And still I was like, no, there's something wrong. And that was the point in which this young doctor sat down, and he was probably the first person that said, tell me about you, tell me about your life. And this is no disrespect to doctors. I have many friends that are doctors, and I understand like just how much pressure they're under, and it might not necessarily be a go-to to ask you how you are. That's not necessarily their position. They're there to put out fires and find if there is something wrong, which they all had gone through the process of doing. But when I reeled off exactly everything that I was doing in life, they were like, oh, yeah, okay. And so there we go. That's kind of my burnout story, the symptoms and then where I was at. And then that led into a rebuild, which I'm not going to lie, was not a quick fix. Probably a good 6 to 12 months of me really reassessing, not so much my life, but, well, yeah, I guess lifestyle and career. So I worked in construction for 17 years and I loved it. I loved everything about the kind of fast-pacedness of it. The fact that I was the only woman on site was pretty cool. But it wasn't feeding something underneath. I was always doing these side projects, these side hustles on the side. And I think by ignoring those, that's what caused my burnout. It was a complete misalignment that was just going off on this trajectory and getting me further from, I guess, what I like to call a compass. And so I sat down and was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And that's the point where I think some people get to and they don't listen, and then they end up on this trajectory that they go one way and don't swing it back to where they need to be. So that's why I really like talking about burnout, because lots of people have different stories, and inevitably we can all help each other if we discuss our own. So the career had to change, but like most people, I'd got golden handcuffs in this job. It was my own business. I couldn't just step away from it at that point. And the side projects that I had weren't making any money. So I was in this really sticky situation. But I was like, if I don't make a decision now, and if I don't start doing something that completely aligns with who I am, I don't know if I would come back from whatever that burnout was. So this was a point at which gave me almost no choice. And I think lots of guests that I've had on my show have had this same point. And I'm like, that's such a shame that we can't catch this beforehand, because we shouldn't have to get to that point of kind of no return. So what did I start doing? I stripped everything back. And then I concentrated on these three things, which was sleep, food, and exercise. I hadn't really been exercising because I was worried about the heart palpitations. The food was all over the place, and obviously sleep comes with anxiety, etc. So I stripped everything back. I really pulled back on work. I gave them an end date to which I was going to be working to, which was about I think it was probably about 3 or 4 months from that point. I stopped all my side projects, and I just focused on me. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do and what a life would look like that really served me moving forward. Now, don't get me wrong, in my 20s and 30s, my life absolutely did serve me, did lots of traveling. Like I say, had a really, like, I guess, stressful but fun job. 40s now, I was creeping up to my 40s, I knew that had to change. So there was a lot of self-reflection and trying to get to a point where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And again, it's really important for me to say that this is not a quick thing. This is a process. I ended up writing out things that helped me, that didn't help me. And for anyone interested, down below, I will link it. I've kind of reformulated what I used into what I would want to use now. And there's a little worksheet. You can download it if you want. There's no pressure. Called The Reckoning, which just helped me write out exactly what was important to me and what wasn't, and made me kind of understand the areas that were sucking the Michelle out of Michelle, if that makes any sense. And yeah, it took a while, but like I say, those three basic things. And then that's when I properly decided, okay, well, the show is going to be the thing that I want to grow. And what's really interesting is I'm 2 years into growing the podcast now, and it has probably been emotionally harder than anything I did in engineering, definitely financially, anyone starting a business, but I've not had a burnout. And I think that's because there's this compass, which is my purpose, which is to help to inspire and empower women. If you're a man listening, don't worry, I'm here for you too. But that's the sole purpose of the show. And because of that, every time I feel like I'm coming away from it, knowing that there's this strong link that lies in the center, has allowed me to not really burn out. That plus a few things which I will come on to now, that ensure, and okay, I'm 2 years in, so it's not like an epic amount of time, but I'm pretty confident that it's working. All right, now some of these might be a little bit left field, but I'm someone that loves self-development. I love reading. I love Stoicism and the Stoics. And so these are the kind of things that I've learned have worked for me over, like I say, kind of the last 2 years. I've got my notes here, so I'm going to refer to them. Number one was to stop running on adrenaline. So when I worked in construction, it was crazy. And that's how I ran, like the heart beating so fast because a project was going on and you had to be quick with knowing how much concrete was needed. You've got people shouting at me for drainage layouts. It was this crazy world where from 7 in the morning, probably till 4 or 5 at night, it just didn't stop. And I thought, wow, this is life. This is great. But actually what it does, it just sends your nervous system into this crazy overdrive and your body just breaks at some point. And I've seen this quite a lot with men in the industry, which is super interesting in that, you know, nobody escapes this, and your body gets to a certain point, it just goes, no, not. So for me, if I find myself running on adrenaline for things, then I just try and reassess and think, oh, this is not a good way of going about things. But with that being said, what I mean by adrenaline is that fight or flight mode, not the highs and lows of like having fun and doing fun things, because I'm absolutely still down for that. Number two, this is a real big one for me, and that's overthinking. I had a tendency to overthink things, especially with my side hustles. Having goals, which is what the third one is going to lead into. So I was so obsessed with reaching certain targets. In the construction world, it was kind of financially and salary based. And then for my side projects, it was like so many followers on Instagram, and the business needs to be turning over this amount of money, and I need to be, and it was just crazy, because what happened with these goals is that I was doing so much, there was no way I was going to achieve any of them. And then I was in this like failure loop of blaming myself for just not being good enough. And then it's crazy how that happens. So now with anything that I do, especially with the show, is I try not to focus too much on goals. And I mean that, I'm probably gonna have to cover this in another video, but I don't mean specifically to have high goals. That is perfectly fine and everybody needs that. But I mean having like specific, like turning over X amount of money next year or having X amount of followers. As soon as that happened, then when you don't get there, you get this like internal failure dialogue, and it's just terrible. It really feeds into every aspect of your life, and it's something that I had to get rid of. Like I say, that's been a journey, and hopefully I'll do another video on that specifically, because I'm still working on it, but it's super interesting. And then a big one was not being present, which feeds again into those two. It was I was constantly looking at the future. I just wasn't enjoying things around me. I'd got two incredible kids, and life was great. I had everything that I needed, and I was always focusing on the next thing, the next holiday, the next adventure, the next project, the next paycheck, and it was crazy because there was no gratitude in there, and I was internally telling myself, you're not good enough, you need to get to the next step. So I think that was huge for me, not being present. And then when you're present, you can realize, oh, my body doesn't feel too good because I've not slept. My body doesn't feel that great because I've just fed it 390 million mozzarella sticks from McDonald's. Yeah, they almost gave me a loyalty card because of that. So I guess those three things now, so stop running on adrenaline, stop overthinking, do not set, too specific goals, and not being present, have really helped me pull back into line. And there's probably going to be more that I'm going to add to that list in the next couple of years. But I just wanted to share those with you today. They may help you if you are feeling kind of burnt out. Yeah, so that is it. If you are kind of feeling burnout and you want to check out the workbook that's free, maybe start jotting down where you are in life. You might figure out some home truths. And it's been nice sharing this story with you today, and hopefully I'll be back with another video soon. If you watch and listen to the show, you'll know that a lot of my guests have kind of been through something similar, and there's probably a lot of stories shared that you can learn from too. So thanks for tuning in. Shoe Dares wins.